Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this special briefing with Stand With Us UK and Colonel Miri Eisen. This is one of a series of webinars that we have arranged with the charity ever since this crisis has begun. We strongly believe that education can empower communities across the UK to truly stand up for the truth, to fight anti-Semitism, and of course, to combat Israel misinformation. At Stand With Us UK, we have been going into schools, universities, communities, synagogues, and of course, with our young professionals, really ensuring that not everyone is left behind in this fight that we are pursuing. It's an honor to host Miri Eisen, a very close friend of Stand With Us. She is part of the intelligence community in Israel, spanning a 20-year career in the military. After retiring, Eisen has served as the international media advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. And we're really going to have a very insightful webinar. Please, as you're listening, think of questions to ask Miri as we progress through the webinar. Miri will address us for about 25 to 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A. Miri, whenever you're ready, we're ready to start.
Thank you so much. I'm going to say good evening to you in the UK. I am sitting right now in my house. It's the evening hours, and we've all kind of been together for the last 3 weeks. What I want to try and do right now is to give a frame. And when I talk about the different narratives or the way it's being presented in that sense, I'd like to give a full frame of the events that are still ongoing from October 7th. And then I want to give you that alternative frame. And at that stage, you're going to have to breathe in deep. I think that it's something that of all places in the UK, you've gotten it in a very harsh way. And I'm not here now to solve things, but I do hope that what I can do is to assist in what we do in this situation, because it's part of the Hamas media manipulation, and I'll talk about that in a moment. I have been in the arena of security, terror, wars for my adult life. I say sadly that you all know me because when something bad happens, I'm on TV. And I say that with a smile. And I think there may be, okay, don't know if there's a siren right now, but hopefully. Definitely interceptions. Okay, just a moment. Okay, as long as there's no siren here, I am sitting because I'm not in my safe room. That when I talk about the issues of what is happening right now, the events of October 7th, 2023 are a watershed moment. They are not similar to anything we've ever had. And I say that because the frame that I'm going to talk about is a different frame from anything else. And the biggest challenge is that both in the United Kingdom and worldwide, not all over the place, I just did Fox News, and for a change, I was like, yay on Fox, you get that Israeli frame that I'll talk about in a moment. But the overwhelming frame of the media is, this is more of the same. So I want to present what's different, and then I want to present what that narrative is of the more of the same, and try to understand that, and then we're going to open it up for questions. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas, a hybrid terror organization. And I want to give what that means. It's a terror organization that for over 16 years has ruled over a territory. It's a terrorist organization that was established in the 1980s as a terror organization. It continues to build its terror capabilities, and it has, in addition, added in different types of capabilities that has to do with the way they view the world. But their view is that they will achieve the freedom of Palestine through the destruction of Israel. That's Hamas, and we've always known that. That isn't something new. What is new, what is different on October 7th is that the terror organization Hamas did a mega terror assault, unprecedented, incomparable, pre-planned in great detail against the state of Israel. And they did it from a territory into the Israeli territory. And it was a combined terror assault. Every single thing that I say right now has been done in terrorism. Kidnapping for hostages. That's like, I'm very cynical, and I'm hoping that my British audience will appreciate it, even though I have an American accent. Because, you know, it's like terrorism 101, hostages are an asset. So they're going to come in for hostages. But this isn't about the hostages, which I'll get to in a moment. That's only part of the plan. The plan itself is, how do you show Israel that you can invade, attack, destroy, and show your heroism? I'm talking about what they did on Saturday, October 7th, and how they presented it also. And from that, how do you take the hostages and go back with the hostages as an asset, the hostages as a bait, and use your protection of the civilians of the Gaza Strip? So what's new? Thousands of terrorists attacked simultaneously. It doesn't matter if it was at the same second. There has been no attack like that in terrorist history against, and I'm even going to go so far, because terrorism is something that's throughout the Middle East. There's nothing to compare to it. The only place I can kind of compare it to is to African Sahel, to some of the Islamic State attacks. But the Islamic State did not at that stage rule over a territory. Hamas have ruled over a territory for 16 years. They based themselves inside, they're part of that population. And in the attack itself, they used every single capability that they have. None of the separate capabilities are what surprised. It was the all-over joint attack of 30 to 35 different Israeli communities simultaneously, each one of them by teams of 10 to 20 terrorists coming in under, you learn, I'm saying something right now that's very disturbing, but I want you to understand it because it's part of where we are. Terrorism is very innovative, meaning it wants to get its aim, its political aim, by the use of violence. And what it does is it looks and tries to say how it gets past the other capabilities of counterterrorism. We're innovative too. We absolutely failed on October 7th. I'm not talking about that right now. But our failure was an immediate one with a horrific result. But the capabilities that we built still exist. And what Hamas did on Saturday morning is they got past them in an immediate way. They downed all of the visuals, meaning so that we wouldn't be able to see. But what they did in that sense, I mean, I've spoken to your groups before, and I've met you in Israel before, and people with Stand With Us are very involved. We always talk about the Iron Dome, and we say that what's so amazing about Israelis, and I love saying that, is that over the last decade, since we've had the Iron Dome, Israelis have acted very responsibly, meaning when the rockets come in, we know that there's Iron Dome, but we don't go outside and look at it. We go into the safe rooms. The terror pre-plan of Hamas was to turn the safe room into the murder attack room. That's what they did. On Saturday morning, they took that aspect that all Israelis know, that when there is a siren, you go into the safe room. When there are the rockets, and in the area near the Gaza Strip, it's mortars and rockets. You go into the safe room and you're safe there. It's been exceedingly successful, and there have been casualties, including a little boy several years ago. And I can't believe I'm saying that after the 1,400 that I can't comprehend of the last 3 weeks. But I'm saying that because that's part of our technique. And Hamas took that and opened an enormous barrage of rockets, of mortars, both onto the direct Gaza Strip perimeter and into the depth of Israel. And that's called terror innovation. Because what did it do? It sent us all into the safe rooms. It sent also, I mean, the soldiers, it sends everybody into the safe rooms. That's what you do. They've been following us for years. That's what they do. And under that, they took out the line of observatories. Most of the observation posts still could work to a certain degree. But when I talk about an innovative, different terror attack, there's nothing like it ever. But to me, that's not the issue. It's about thousands. That is horrifically different. It is much more about the plan itself. Because on October 7th, they came in with a terror manual that said, A, go in and kill everybody you see. Do selection. It's written into the instructions. Do selection, meaning kill 9 human beings, 85-year-olds, babies. Take one. And they took, as we know, hundreds, because they attacked dozens of communities at the same time. And in every single one of these communities, both from, there are places that are lesser known to people, from Holit in the south, from Be'eri, from Re'im, from Kfar Aza, from, I'm blanking on names right now, near Oz, from, but they took, but this was about the selection. They weren't taking families. No. They murdered, butchered, tortured families, and then they take one. And part of what they were doing is part of the terror, chaos, and confusion, and that's also into the instructions, and that's part of the terrorism, is that to add to the chaos and confusion of the rocket barrage, of the simultaneous attacks, of coming in to get the hostages. They wanted to come in to get the hostages. So it was a huge, thousands of people. As part of the plan, they came in dressed in Israeli uniforms in some of the different places. And they, on purpose, as part of the plan, there is nothing. I don't even know. I don't have words for it anymore on the barbaric aspect. The atrocities, as somebody who has looked, I'll say otherwise. I have been the one who has presented scenarios about terrorism over the years. I could have given you this scenario. We saw Hezbollah endlessly practicing this on the northern border. I don't even know how to put these in the words. I am appalled by the atrocity. And I work in terrorism. This has nothing to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I'm going to get in a moment to the framing. This is about the worst atrocities committed in the 21st century ever against the state of Israel. You read about the 1948 war, and we had some battles where there's like the 35, for those who remember the Lamed Hey, that was a battle up towards the Etzion block, and that at the end they were killed and murdered and mutilated, and it was 35 soldiers. Hamas terrorists, as a plan, attacked over 30 Israeli civilian communities, murdered, tortured, mutilated. They booby-trapped bodies. When some of the bodies arrived at the area where the coroner they're now trying to identify bodies, and they already say they're not going to be able to identify. They don't even know to say if it's 200 to 400 bodies, because not just they were so desecrated and mutilated, then they were burnt. They don't even have DNA left. This is unprecedented. That is the frame. I mean, I have taught, and I talk and teach narratives of the conflict. I've done so my entire adult life, and overwhelmingly over the last 15 years. And let's be clear, there's an Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This has nothing to do with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is a pre-planned, horrific terror atrocity that did not happen just on October 7th. I'm in Israel. It is now, I'm going to have to put my glasses on to be able to see and say that, October 26th. We're still in it. Hundreds of people still don't know what happened to their loved ones. The terror attack itself of taking hundreds of hostages, from a 9-month baby through an 85-year-old man, woman. They've let out 4. They've never said who they have. They've never said what's with them. They let out 4 and put out an additional film. That's terror tactics. Terror tactics. That's terror ransom. That's why you try to avoid it in the first place. But once it's happened, that framing in that sense is about what do you do against a terror organization that does and act like this. It isn't over. Everybody keeps comparing it to 9/11 and oh my God, over 9/11. 9/11 were 20 suicide terrorists. They all died. On Saturday, October 7th, thousands of terrorists came into the state of Israel simultaneously, murdered, raped, tortured, killed, butchered, and then burnt. The Israeli Defense Forces have been doing going into the Gaza Strip just to find Israeli dead bodies, because not only did they take back hostages, who I say live, I don't really know, it's not like they said anything. They let out 4 live ones. Do any of us know what the other 230 that Israel has confirmed that they have, what their situation is? But they took with them in wagons dead bodies. This was all pre-planned. I'm emphasizing this aspect because in that sense, this is a frame that I've never had before. I almost, in my own way, as I said, none of us want to be living right now in that time period where this kind of frame can happen at all. I'll add 2 things, and then I want to talk about the alternative frame. It's not an alternative frame. It's untrue. It's the Hamas frame. Talk about that in a moment. I forgot what my line of, it's called 10, it's like I call it that I have mush mind, it's war mind. 3 weeks into it, I sometimes have an idea and then I stop. So I'll continue as I go into the, in 3 weeks into it, what is Israel's goal? This is the Israeli frame, okay? This was the most atrocious terror attack ever worldwide to a population of 10 million people. Oh, can I add in? I'm like, add in. Everything I say is just worse and worse. This attack was planned, of course, on a Jewish holiday. The music festival is one, because I'm sure you've all heard in that sense that at that time and on that day, there was a music festival that was right next to the division headquarters, which was one of the ones that was attacked both from the air and from the ground. Atrocities. But the 30 some communities that were attacked, you know who lives next to you. You know who your neighbor is. You know who woke up on Simchat Torah on the morning of Saturday. You went into your safe rooms. You can have a list. Who do you know was at the music festival? How do you even start to access that aspect of thousands of people? Some got away. Some didn't get away. We don't even know what to ask. How do you put together the list? Have you ever made a list of a music festival? The actions of the Israeli Defense Forces from then, the decisions of the state of Israel, and here I'm saying the official, the security echelon, the cabinet in that sense, is that we will destroy the terror organization capabilities of Hamas. And that's what you're seeing every single day. And some days until now, it's been overwhelmingly air attacks, sea attacks, and some small ground aspects. There have been ground aspects. And that's going to go up a notch. When I say it's going to go up a step, it's because you cannot destroy all of those capabilities that they brought in. Most of them went back. As far as I know at this stage along the way, we killed around 1,000 terrorists inside Israel, Saturday, Sunday, and as those battles went on. We have several hundred prisoners being interrogated, telling us how, I don't even want to read to you all of the things that I'm going to do that, because this is part of the way that they also viewed in a moment, of how Hamas presented to themselves. And in the Gaza Strip, I would say that there are additional 25 to 30 trained terrorists, 25 to 30,000 trained terrorists, 25 to 30,000. And you know where they live? In the middle of 2.2 million people. So I can say, they're not people. So I'm not there. 2.2 million people, that's the whole challenge of this terror hybrid organization. This isn't about the conflict. This is about the terror organization. Israel, from the Saturday of October 7th, when we have been first retaking Israeli territory that was overrun with marauding barbaric terrorists, retaking that, restabilizing the area. In our attacks in the Gaza Strip, we have attacked targets. The term that we use for targets is terrorist infrastructure. Don't we all hate that term? Terrorist infrastructure is weapons, that's rockets and mortars, that's anti-tank missiles, and that's RPGs, that's booby traps, that's IEDs, that's suicide drones. There's a whole list of that's terror infrastructure. For the last decade, 15 years, and you all know this, we've said consistently that Hamas have built a subterranean, we call it the metro, I don't like the term itself, but it's the subterranean arena, which they're using for their own protection. It is a vast arena of tunnels, hundreds of kilometers long, and we have been attacking the entrances to the tunnels, but we've been attacking all of the different locations that we think target that there are terrorists. We've sent in leaflets, we've called on the telephone, we've put it out in broadcast, we've put it into social media. We have told 1 million people to move. It isn't pretty. We've told them to move so that they can live. We're not butchering terrorists. We are going after, targeting terrorists who live amongst their people. And I know for many of us, it's very hard because at the end, Hamas is part of the Gaza Strip, and the Gaza Strip, it's very hard to separate them. We're making the separation right now. We're not going to ever target civilians anywhere. And if the Hamas, and not only that, but in the last week, we've been calling the families. There are special people inside Israel. We have the phone numbers. We actually call the families and say, if you stay together with your Hamas dad, granddad, uncle, whoever he has surrounding them, we will consider you terrorists. Move away. We've killed civilians. We have never targeted a civilian. We're targeting the Hamas terrorists. Because what is the Hamas side of this? Hamas on Saturday, October 7th, very clearly said what their aim is. Their aim is Al-Quds, Jerusalem, El-Aqsa, kill the Jews. Go listen to Muhammad Def. Okay. Sadly, in the UK, that's me being, sarcastic again. They don't like listening to Muhammad Def. Okay. Muhammad Def is the terrorist military commander that has been the top person in Hamas for many years. We've tried to kill him for many, many years, never succeeded. Yay. Okay, so it's our fault because we didn't preempt against the terrorists. But what the Hamas media manipulation is part of the pre-plan. What do I mean? Essentially, it has 3 stages, and you're living it in the UK. I'm in Israel. It's slightly easier for me because I'm doing it from afar. I can talk on BBC and then gag myself. I'm sorry. I find it very difficult because of the frame. Because what is the Hamas media manipulation? And this is the only portion of everything that I've described until now, which is the exact same as the past. Hamas have always tried to manipulate the media, and here they've used the same type of plan. On October 7th, all day long, they uploaded how they prepared, how they caught us by surprise. All day long, they were uploading in Telegram and social media in Arabic for their audience, not for you. They were uploading the heroism of Hamas, who are the ones who can show Israel as being weak. They were uploading. I'm not even going to go. I know that a lot of us are very aware of that, but they all had GoPro cameras. Israel has taken hundreds of GoPro cameras from the terrorist bodies and compiled the worst footage you've ever seen in your life. Because it's not Allahu Akbar. I don't have anything to compare it to. I just don't know what to say about that. As they kill, torture, do the worst things you can think of, they were filming it. They uploaded different portions of that. They uploaded all of the hostage taking, all of the photographs that we have of the hostages is basically all from what they took and what they filmed. They took the phones themselves of all of the hostages and then live streamed it onto the Facebook of the hostage's phone. This is part of the pre-plan. Because in that initial stage, it was like, look at me. I'm like smiling. Now I'm being Hamas. Look what we can do. The Israelis are weak. We're not weak. They're so wrong. The Israelis are weak, and we have caught them. What they did was a murderous terrorist attack that one of the main reasons that we didn't stop it, that we didn't understand it, is because we could not conceive We could not conceive that they could do such an atrocious terror attack. It is very hard to prevent something that you really can't conceive that somebody could do, because I don't perceive them right now as human beings. And the Hamas second stage of their media manipulation is that simultaneously, from October 8th, they have systematically taken down all of what they uploaded. So when Queen Rhina says, I haven't seen any evidence, I'm very disappointed in Queen Rhina. That was me being sarcastic again. She has millions of followers. She says, I don't know, the president said that he saw something like that, but I didn't see that. They uploaded things and then they took them down. By the way, we have everything that they uploaded. From October 7th, 6:30 a.m., we have everything. But not only did they download it, they got all of their leaders to talk about the fact that all that they attacked is military targets and all of the hostages are military. Wait a second, but you all know that there are other hostages. And I bring you to October 26th. Because there is an enormous gap in the way that Hamas, and the third stage of the media manipulation, that they try to do every single time. And sadly, they're successful, very sadly. Because the third stage is in taking the hostages and in hiding behind the 2 million civilians of the Gaza Strip. They take it into the framing that this is Israel against the Palestinians, that this is Israel against the Gazans. Hamas want you to say that. It's called Hamas just won in that frame. That's all they need. Horrific terror attack, upload it and show how strong you are. Remove all of the content and have all of your leaders say, we are successful. We attacked military targets. Yeah, there was a music festival. Do you know what they say about the music festival? They were all 20 to 30 years old. They're all Israeli soldiers. What do they say about that? That they've never said anything about any of the children in any way whatsoever. They haven't said anything about any of the hostages at all. Have you noticed? They're a terror organization. But they flip it into being, and they have their, it's like, and they built over the last decade, and that's why I said it's the only thing that they were very pre-planned, and that this is something that we've already seen, that they have a massive social media presence that amplifies that this is about freedom for Palestine, that this is about the occupation, that this is, until we hear the United Nations Secretary General and go, really? Really? And I know that in the UK, you have it the worst. I want to say as something, I mean, in the last 3 weeks, not only in that sense did the Prime Minister come here, and that's very important, and the Foreign Minister came here. It's very important for us in that sense that the official elected officials understand, as I say. And I'll just say behind the scenes that I myself have been asked and have briefed also labor shadow ministers, that you shouldn't just think that it's the coalition, or I don't remember what the terms is. And I say that specifically in the UK, that everywhere around the world right now, the governments, overwhelmingly the governments that actually understand truth, okay? And I never use those kind of terms. It's about narratives, right? But in this case, because the Hamas media manipulation was upload and show it as a glory, and then erase and say it's all against the military, and then hide behind the civilians and say we're the victims, that's where they succeeded. And they have not succeeded in doing that with any of the governments. And in that sense, I say that because it's very important to continue and to separate at this moment that France and the UK and the EU in general, I mean, it's overwhelming, let alone the United States. I mean, there's those ones, absolutely, I see the difference between the public opinion, and again, not all the public opinion, and the governments themselves. I hope that I portray this in a full way that gives you something in that sense to think about, to understand the context, because when you're talking to somebody right now who says it's about the occupation, it's the Israeli-Palestinian, you know, it's like, or Queen Rhina, okay, I use her as the example, but then I got the Secretary General of the United Nations, and I'm like, okay, can we step back a sec? Okay, let me offer you a horrific different frame. Okay, wow, I talked half an hour, not too bad, we're good. Here I am.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think what keeps on springing to mind for me is the term you used, terror innovation. And you mentioned the word innovation quite a few times. On my personal social media, I'm seeing dozens of posts and stories from non-Jewish, either colleagues or non-Jewish friends that I used to be friendly with, that I grew up with, and they are convinced by the narratives that you've just described, right? What happened was a fight against occupation. What happened was an empowering moment in Palestinian history. A few of my previous acquaintances have changed their profile pictures to those of paragliders going into Jerusalem, going into Al-Aqsa. And this might even be a very simple question, and I don't know if you have the answer, but how is it that common day civilians across the world, educated people, can be so convinced by something that's, to me, clear as day, right? It's a fight between good and evil. How can they be so enwrapped in that? If you have any thoughts.
I've been thinking about it certainly for the last 2 weeks since it changed so much. And here I say sadly in that sense that when I said that this is something unprecedented and we've never seen anything like it, part of the Hamas plan and success from their point of view has been a decade of building a social media presence and framing that's very difficult to do something about. That media frame is not just about the occupation, and everything's about the occupation, and everything's about Israel-Palestine. The media frame that to me is even worse is that nobody believes Israel. When Hamas says something, nobody does the separation between Hamas and Palestinian. And when Hamas and the Palestinians themselves, in that sense, as I say, in the pro-Palestinian community, are not doing that separation right now. Now, to me, that's absolute media manipulation. And every time I say we're attacking Hamas, and that's why I'm very appreciative right now that at least even in the BBC, it's about Israel against Hamas, even if we are attacking in the Gaza Strip. And I say that to me is the little things that we need to note to do those separations. And if you can get to a stage that people are willing to do Israel against Hamas, and Hamas is inside the Gaza Strip, and that's tough, but it's Israel against Hamas, that's one step. The media manipulation itself, which is in its own way worse to me, is that right now, really, I don't know how to say these things, I feel safer in the under attack state of Israel, where every once in a while there's a siren, than I would if I was a Jew or Israeli anywhere around the world today. That's the impact of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of that delegitimizing of Israel that all of us have talked about so long. We've all been involved in it so long. So when you say, how can that be? Because somebody that for 30 years knows that that's what's it about, that's what is about, it's very challenging to change it. And the only way to change it is to be a purveyor of immensely disturbing images. And none of us want to do that. It's incredibly hard. And I don't know, I don't know how to solve it. I know that in one-on-one conversations, sometimes with thinking people, I'll put it this way, if there's a very progressive TV channel in the States that I do almost every evening, MSNBC, meaning there's the NBC, but MSNBC is like the progressive United States. And already from 2 weeks ago, I could start hearing the change in that sense. And that's on TV. It's when you're talking to people and you want to get them to convey more of a message. And it's talking about that I, Miri, protect, as an Israeli, Gazan civilians more than any Hamas ever did. That I, Miri, as an IDF officer, don't want to ever think that I ever targeted in any way any civilian anywhere. And I'm warning them. I'm warning them again. And I haven't done a ground operation because I'm warning them again. And Hamas, and it's important, When somebody says Palestinian, I say, no, Hamas, not the Palestinians. I think that what Hamas have done is the worst thing for the Palestinians ever. And to do that kind of separation is something that you can do in dialogue with some of the thinking people, but it's really hard.
Yes, I have experience in that. We've got a few more questions coming in, so I'm going to read them out.
Thank you, because otherwise I have to put my glasses on.
Totally fine. A question from Alan. How can we make sense of the people of Gaza being told to move south, and then the media shows them bombing in the south? So how do we maybe confront that?
Okay, so Israel is targeting Hamas targets. The targets that we're targeting up north at this stage along the way, as we've been weeks telling people to move south, we're not giving early warning. We're attacking targets in the northern Gaza Strip. Throughout the Gaza Strip, we still give early warning to specific buildings. And if you look, I mean, this is a war. This is not a happy one, but it isn't about allowing and enabling the Hamas terrorists to use, again, that cover. We're never targeting civilians, and we're looking at the top echelon. I'll put it even worse, Alan, okay? To me, it's clear that all of the top terrorists are in their tunnels under the 9 hospitals of the Gaza Strip, because they know that we would never attack them, that we didn't attack them then, and we would never target them. So that's where the top terrorists are. What do you want us to do with that? Because we're not going to attack the hospital. So we've been very clear about clearing out all of the northern Gaza Strip, but that's part of the challenge. You don't want to allow it to be a safe haven, and you try to be as exact as you can all of the time.
Thank you. Question from Linda. President Biden has talked about a 2-state solution as a panacea for after the war on Hamas. He doesn't mention the Palestinian Authority's non-negotiable and inalienable right of return, the resettlement of millions of descendants of Palestinian refugees in Israel within the Green Line. This would demographically destroy Israel as a Jewish state. The PA's vision for the end of the conflict is the opposite of a 2-state solution. Hamas is more forthright in its aims. Please comment. That's how the question.
Linda, you just gave, it's called the short, brief history of all of the challenges that we have. In Israel right now, Linda, we're not yet talking about the day after. I don't think that, I'll say otherwise. I said that I feel safer here right now. Israel is in war. We're in war. Okay, the state of Israel, not the south of Israel, the state of Israel. 300,000 people have been mobilized into the military. That's every single household, including my own. Workplaces are not open, and if they're so at the most, it's like remote work because of COVID. So when you're asking about, what's going to happen afterwards, can we get through this stage? How are we going to destroy Hamas? Okay, how are we going to do so without as much as possible hurting the civilians of the Gaza Strip? What are we going to do about Hezbollah? And we haven't talked about the hostages. So keep that aside. Because Lyndon, I'm not going to make it easier for you right now, okay? Or for myself. At the end, there are millions of Palestinians not in the diaspora. Over 2 million in the Gaza Strip, 2.5 million in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. Okay, they're there. They're not disappearing tomorrow morning. So yes, somebody is going to have to address what happens after. Palestinian Authority, something instead, something new. Let's get past this stage. There are people thinking about it. That doesn't make it any easier. And if it was easy to have done the Israeli-Palestinian resolution pre-October 7th, it became that much harder after October 7th. That's clear.
Another question coming in about geopolitics. With Russia supporting Iran and probably Hamas, do you think Israel made a mistake not supporting Ukraine more? Also, with Turkey's stance, do you think you'll be supporting Armenia in its next conflict with Azerbaijan? So I guess it's really about Israel and the alliances that she has or hasn't made.
We always ask it about ourselves, and I'm just going to say right now, I'm sure that you don't have the UK relations with any countries that you're like not necessarily proud of. I mean, like Qatar or Saudi Arabia, or, you know, could I go to Queen Rina in Jordan because I'm on her at the moment right now, but it's not her fault. Geopolitics are a complex arena. This isn't about all of the good guys hand in hand together and you don't have relations with anybody else. Russia, I think that part of what's going to evolve, that's part of the challenge right now, is that we really are seeing a different kind of alignment. And in that different kind of alignment, Russia has come out even more clearly where we all saw where they were. 1 in 6 Israelis' native tongue is still Russian. Okay, that's me inside Israel. That's a relationship that's there. I can sever it. I can acknowledge it. In that 1 in 6 Israelis' native tongue is Russian. Probably half of those are from the Ukraine because they spoke Russian in the Ukraine before they immigrated to Israel. Just saying that complexity of who you support and who you don't support. Israel has been clear on our clear-cut enemies as opposed to everything else. The Islamic regime of Iran, it's not the 95 million Persians, it's the Islamic regime which control in that sense. It is the Shiite allies, proxies, both in Yemen, who have already fired at Israel. Iraq isn't doing too well on that front. Syria under Bashar, and of course, Hezbollah. So add in, you know, what's Russia doing? Can I give you some good news? India is really on our side. Yay. Okay. I'm saying, you know, the world is aligned when I say on it, they're against terror. India is presenting this very much about Hamas, the terror organization. They're very scared of that kind of terrorism. So I don't have a solution for you here. I think that geopolitics are complex, but look at the bright side. Israel, in its worst, this is the worst war, and this is a war we're going to be here. I'm not worried about that, but this is one that has immediately ramifications, not just for the United States, but for additional countries around the world. This is not just Israel. If Hamas terror assault works, the copycats will come out all over. And that's not good news for anybody. So in that sense, Russia, that everybody's in the diplomacy right now, and I really can't even in that sense assess more. I know that right now, I mean, it's 3 US aircraft carriers on the way to Israel. That's actually more airplanes than we have. Okay. That the alignment in that sense of a combined amount, as I was listening before to John Kirby, who's the spokesperson of President Biden, and was conveying the information about what the US troops are doing. They were showing on the news all of the different places that US troops have already been attacked in Iraq and in, okay. Yes, that's developing to there, but again, that's part of where we are. I don't know where it will lead.
Just as a quick follow-up question, we've obviously mentioned geopolitics. We mentioned rumblings that are occurring with US troops, especially. My background is in international relations. I remember delving into the Arab Spring in quite a lot of detail. My worry, naturally, is Arab Spring round 2. Do you think it's likely in the near, not so distant future that other Arab and Muslim states will rise up and see what's happening as a call for Muslims to act against the West, or to really take things into their own hands? What we saw in 2011, 2012 was obviously, again, unprecedented. You're seeing scenes in Tunisia. They lit a synagogue on fire. You're seeing protests in Jordan, in Egypt. Do you think there's the likelihood of this happening again? And second question is, do you think other states are trying to minimize that as best as they can?
Hamas wants that to happen. Hamas is trying as much as possible to amplify that this is about there's the Muslim Brotherhood aspect of that, of arriving out, but it comes hand in hand with Palestine as part of the Ummah, as part of the Muslim, that you cannot have this cancerous Jewish entity here. So there's certainly, that's when I talked about the media manipulation, but it's also what they're going out and saying, is to go out and say, uprise. They've already done several different times, and tomorrow's a Friday. They do this also on Fridays. Tomorrow it's expected again. So yes, it's there. they haven't been successful in that sense. But here you also get into the challenge of the different countries that you mentioned. And at the end, they're all different type of authoritative governments. This isn't about them turning into democracies. And if you ask the people what the people want, you have to watch out what you get in that sense. Half the population from Morocco through Iran, half the population in every single one of those countries is under the age of 25. At least by the descriptions right now, half the population in the Gaza Strip is under the age of 25, and many of the terrorists that came in on Saturday, October 7th, and then there was a mob that kind of came in after them also on October 7th, were overwhelmingly under the age of 25. So your question is a great question. I don't have an answer to it. I just put it more into a context. And I don't, the different country leaders are very worried, and here it's very interesting, that they're very worried that Hamas will be shown as a winner, because that means that all of those countries are going to go, it's like there's the digim, the model that they're so afraid of. Okay. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, all of their countries right now want to show their support for the Palestinians because of the whole framing of this being about Israel, Palestine, and the occupation, and they have to cater so that they're not deposed by the mob that's going to overtake them. So it's a very delicate balance that they do, both in Jordan and in Egypt, and in Saudi Arabia, and in Morocco for that matter. And every single one of them is going to have to see how they do. So I gave you in that sense, that broad sense. The only one of all of the countries around us that has made a very clear statement saying that what Hamas did is atrocities and that civilians should not be part of it, and that's fine. If Queen Rhina would say that, I'd be better, okay? But she questioned the atrocities. That's why, again, that's me and Queen Rhina. I obviously have a thing about that. But the foreign minister of the Emirates, a woman, very clearly stated that Hamas did atrocities and that civilians should never be attacked. Okay, so it was a statement that I can live with a lot better, that I'd be happy if in the UK, I would hear that from those voices who are, overwhelmingly framing, because again, Hamas erased it. Mm-hmm. And so now it's this place where it's like the Jews are inventing it. And it's become very anti-Semitic in that sense as well.
I see you're seeing language about propaganda crop up, Israeli propaganda, which again almost mirrors what was happening in the 40s and 30s, which is again very worrying. I have time for two more questions. So one from Stella. How does one deal with people who claim that the massacre was an inside job by Israel to have an excuse to start a war? In context that Israel supposedly had warnings and had an impregnable border.
I'm rephrasing because this is the way that I've answered to this question before. So what you're saying is that you, Israel, are so smart that either we actually pre-planned the worst massacre in history to enable us to do a massacre. So then why aren't we just killing the 2 million people in the Gaza Strip? That would be one way. Okay. And the other is what I said earlier. We did not see this because as I said, the breadth and the depth of the atrocities are beyond something that we ever understood, that we ever thought of. And I am not going to apologize for that. It means that I'm going to look at horrible things and think of horrible things in the future. But if I miss that one, I could not conceive that a terror organization situated next to me would do an attack with these kind of atrocities. You know what? It's because I'm a human being and we failed. Okay. And we've been saying that, but right now we're fighting a war. And I know that I gave you two different framings in that sense there. One of them is slightly more cynical, but it's to me the one I'm like, oh, like how conspiracy can you be? By the way, it was all, and I'm saying, because I know that you're wanting it as an answer. It's like, that is the depth of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
That the Jews plan that. By the way, I've gotten a question where the Jews control the media. So how can it be that the media is against you? I've gotten that question from China and Pakistan. Okay, because if you obviously, okay, it must be true because we know that you control the media, and if we're against you, then that must be that it's true. I'm like,
yeah, we're all powerful, we're all knowing. Yeah, unfortunately,
such a lovely subject, isn't it? But then it's been very challenging 3 weeks.
yes, and it's you can't really comprehend it. Jeremy has asked, I guess, a follow-up question to what we've just discussed. With your background, and I think with Israel's strong military and intelligence capabilities, how can it be that such a large-scale attack, with, as you described, pre-planned collecting of the equipment, the wagons that brought the bodies back? I really can't go on, but how could it have been totally unseen? And I think what I've seen, especially when it comes to speaking to the younger community, the younger Jewish communities in the UK, there's a sense of anger, I think, when this question is asked or when we've done in-person events. I think people just don't understand how this could have happened. And again, are quite angry / astonished that this happened.
I'm going to answer in the following way, and I hope that this answers it. I was doing a live interview on October 5th on I-24 News, which is the locally based English, Arabic, and French channel. And it was about 50 years to the Yom Kippur 73 war. And it was aired on October 5th and on October 6th, on the Thursday and on the Friday. And in it, the 3 panelists we were asked, this was on October 5th, I'm on tape and live. Could the failure of the intelligence failure of the 73 war happen again? Each one of us were asked. And I looked at the camera and I said, absolutely, tomorrow morning. I'm on tape. Why? Because you can gather a lot of information. You can have amazing capabilities. You can have lots of pieces of information. Sometimes, like 9/11, like October 7th, you can have a ton of information and you go, how did I not prevent it? But when you're not asking that question, you're not always going to see the answer. And I know that that doesn't calm people down. And it doesn't make it any better, not for the 1,400 people that were slaughtered, for the failure that it was. But I'm saying that that's part of the challenge anywhere at any time. You need to be aware of that. The capabilities continue to exist, and what's in its own way, and I'm breathing in and I'm saying to all of you, the intelligence community in Israel continued to work on October 7th. It failed and it continued to work. All of those capabilities are there. We have been targeting terrorists against in the Gaza Strip. We have been targeting endless units of Hezbollah up on our northern border. We are constantly acting now against the different terror teams also inside the West Bank. We have those capabilities and our troops. The failure of October 7th is one which to me has to do with that overall, what you're looking at. You're not looking for that. It's hard to see it. Even when you see lots and lots of it, it isn't necessarily the same. And the last thing that I'll say on that is that having built scenarios of what terrorists are going to do, the Israeli military was very focused on this type of a scenario, and we were looking at Hezbollah in the north. And here we are. I told you, we're 3 weeks into a war. We're in war. The communities in the north have been evacuated. They have been taken away from their homes to save their lives, because maybe Hezbollah will do that. Because after you have failed also once in that sense, you question yourself, you look around, you're not going to take that chance. And I think that the most important point at the end of all of this is that in the last 3 weeks, which have been incomprehensible, unprecedented, impossible, the people of Israel are amazing. And our resilience in that sense is seen in a negative way outside. Okay, so just think of this negative aspect of the narratives that I was talking about before. It was your fault because you had all this intelligence. Terrorism is innovative. It was your fault because I mean, again, in that sense, as you do that, you should have stopped it in the first place. So now the hostages are our problem, meaning terrorism is innovative. That's your fault. The hostages were taken. That's your fault. The 2 million citizen people inside the Gaza, it's like our fault as I go on. We, in the last 3 weeks, have been standing, surviving, mourning. We've been burying our dead. We don't have time to mourn them and sit Shiva. We've sent everybody out to the fronts. We've evacuated communities up north and communities down south, and we're trying to accommodate it all. Everybody is out in volunteer work, an entire country. And that's part of who we are too. And that spirit does not come through in any of the media outlets. And that's something that we know, certainly people who are strong supporters of Israel who are with Stand With Us. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I really do think that right now, in a very odd way, it's easier to be here in this enormous uncertainty than it is to be overseas right now as a Jew, as an Israel supporter. And I just want to send from here, stay safe. We're trying to stay safe, and we will get through this together.
Thank you, Miri. Really appreciate your time and your wise words. Like what Miri said, everyone in Stand With Us is here to support you all. And hopefully the next coming weeks, I hope it's not longer than that. I hope the crisis ends very, very soon. We have an upcoming webinar with Professor Rosa Friedman, where we'll be discussing international law, and we'll be covering topics to do with tough questions that have occurred in terms of a humanitarian crisis or humanitarian narratives. We're also going to be talking about proportionality and a lot of common narratives that have come up in the media. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Miri, again. It was an honor to have you.
Laila Tov, stay safe.